Hello, I'm Ollie and this is Criminolly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, your feedback on the 10 books I've had for ages. So a few weeks ago, I put up a video talking about 10 books I've had physical copies of for absolutely ages, but haven't got around to reading yet. That video generated a load of comments. I asked in the video for people to tell me which of the 10 books they would prioritise reading first. So I thought it would be interesting to come back and talk about those comments. The community aspect of the channel is really, really important and something I probably don't talk about enough in videos, but I often get comments from people thanking me for recommendations I've made for, books they've discovered through the channel. But a lot of the books I talk about on the channel are books that have been recommended to me by you, either in the comments or on my Discord or via email or whatever. So you are all part of the channel and feed into the books I talk about on the channel. So I thought it would be interesting doing a video that kind of specifically addresses that. So talking about the comments and recommendations I got back based on this pile of 10 books that I've had for too long. So let me just start by reminding you what the books are, and then I'll talk about each of them and what feedback I got on them. There's one book I didn't get any feedback at all on in the comments, so nobody mentioned it at all. There are, and one of the books only got negative comments. Most of the books either got overwhelmingly positive comments or kind of a mixture of the two. But I've got an idea of certainly the top 3 out of this part that are the ones I'm going to be reading next. So anyway, just a reminder then, the books were Blood Cruise by Matt Strandberg. Is it Strandberg? Transition by Iain Banks. LA Confidential by James Ellroy. A Heartbreaking Work of Staggering Genius by Dave Eggers. The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I'm in danger of having a pile of books fall over. Our Kind of Traitor by John LeCarre. Handling the Undead by, what's his name? Alvide Lindqvist. Loop by Koji Suzuki. And Noir by Olivier Pot. So I'm going to go through them in reverse order of how I just showed them, because that's how the stack is, so that makes sense. So Noir only got one comment, and that was a negative comment. So somebody said it was very literary and quite exhausting, which definitely doesn't sound like my kind of thing. So this one may go back to the charity shop from whence it came many years ago. Next up then is Loop by Koji Suzuki. So a couple of people commented that they'd read this, they enjoyed The Ring, so this is the sequel to The Ring. I've got the 3rd book in the series as well, Spiral. So I think the general tone in the comments was it's not quite as good as The Ring, but it's a decent continuation of the series. So definitely a book I'll hang on to, but maybe not one I'll prioritise. Next then, Handling the Undead. So some positive comments on this, some negative comments. So at least one person said they DNF'd it. Other people said it's okay, but it's not John Alvide Lindqvist's best book. Little Star, I think, was the one that was recommended, which I have got a copy of as well. So I've got, I think, 3 other books by him, all of which I've had for ages. So maybe, I think he's an author I definitely want to continue with, but maybe I won't start with this one. Next then, Our Kind of Traitor. So some negative comments about this book in particular, but generally, very positive comments about John LeCarre. I think I said in my previous video, my real plan with LeCarre is to just read all of his stuff in order, and particularly the George Smiley books. So I think I'm going to continue with that method of reading his work. So reading them in order, which means I'll get to this at some point, but not anytime soon. Next up, we have The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. Definitely a mix of comments on this one. At least one person said they had to persevere with it. They had to try it a few times, which is my experience with the only Donna Tartt book I've actually finished, which was The Secret History. So that's a book I started many times, and it took me a few bites to get through it. But when I finally did manage to read it, I absolutely loved it. And that was the experience of at least one person with The Goldfinch as well. So a difficult book, but worth persevering with. But then there was also a comment from someone who said it was by far their least favourite of Donna Tartt's books, and they really didn't enjoy it at all. So this one probably, it certainly hasn't gone up my priority list in terms of wanting to read it. I probably will hang on to it and get to it at some point. Although I do wonder with books like this. So a book like this, which A is quite big and takes up a lot of space on the shelves, and B is always going to be easy to get a copy of, and will always be easy to get a copy of from the library. So maybe that's a good reason to unhaul it, actually, just to make space. Okay, next we have one of the books which has definitely ended up in my top 3. And I expected this one to get good feedback, given who the author is, given he's an author that lots of people really like. So that is The Yiddish Policemen's Union by Michael Chabon. So only positive comments about this book. A lot of people said they thought it was a really wonderful book, and a book I would enjoy as well, because it's kind of an alternative history type thing, which I quite enjoy. It's got, a bit of crime in there too. So that has definitely ended up in my top 3 of ones I will get to at some point. Next then, a heartbreaking work of staggering genius by Dave Eggers. So I think the comments on this were not what I expected. So I think I had this book miscategorised in my head as being a bit what's the word? Like dude bro literary kind of thing, but it seems like people do think it's really interesting, moving work, very personal work. Lots of people really loved this book in the comments, so that again has definitely ended up in my top 3. I will prioritise this and try to get to this at some point. It's not as long as it looks either. It looks like it's really long, but it's actually only just over 400 pages. Next then, LA Confidential by James Ellroy. So again, I think James Ellroy was the author who got the most positive comments. So loads of people, big fans of James Ellroy, and definitely saying they think he's an author I will like. As I said in that previous video, I've only read, I think, one other book by him, which was The Black Dahlia. What I had forgotten when I talked about this book, I think, is that this is book 3, I think, in the LA Quartet. So The Black Dahlia, which I've read, is book 1. The second book is The Big Nowhere. Then there's this one, and then there's another one, which I now forget the name of. So lots of people said, yes, definitely read this, but read The Big Nowhere first. So I will track down a copy. That's another book that's probably easy to get from the library. So I'll track down a copy of The Big Nowhere and read that before I read LA Confidential. But loads of people said this is definitely worth reading. Next up then, Transition by Iain Banks. So Iain Banks, an author I was a huge fan of when I was kind of in my teens and 20s. This one got a mix of comments. So at least one person saying they really didn't enjoy it. Other people saying they liked it. So I think this stays on my shelf as one I will get to at some point, but definitely not one I'm going to prioritise. There are other books by Iain Banks, some of his kind of really late works just before he died, that I want to read more than this, I think. And then finally we get to the book that had no comments at all, which is Blood Cruise by Matt Strandberg. Now I have seen, like on Goodreads and Instagram and things like that, people talking about this book very positively. So I am going to hang on to it and read it at some point, but it wasn't one that garnered any feedback from you at all. So that was my kind of reprise of my 10 books that I've had for far too long. So yes, I've got the 3, which are The Big Nowhere, which actually wasn't one of the top 10, one of the original 10, the Dave Eggers book, and the Michael Chabon book. So those are my 3 that I'm going to try and prioritise and read, hopefully in the next few months. We'll see how I go. My plans for reading don't always go quite to plan. But yes, I thought it would be interesting to feedback to all of you on your feedback to me, because as I say, it's a really important part of the channel and really does feed into the stuff I read. So always really delighted to receive recommendations from people. So keep making them in the comments and via email and however you want to communicate with me. Anyway, I will leave it there and say, as always, thank you very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff, and I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.